Sit. It is. Certainly one of my, next to Easter, my favorite moment of the year. So I was chatting with Casco. This is Casco, named after Casco Bay in Maine. I was chatting with Casco the other day, and Casco said, I'm really worried. I'm really worried about the future. I mean, you fed me today, not enough, I might add, but I'm a little worried about tomorrow and the rest of the week and the rest of the year. Yeah, that did not happen. This is what we learn from our connection with all creation, is to be present. And I'm going to make her a present. Okay. Good. Thank you. Welcome to all of you. We're glad that we can be here on this special day. We have been through a time of great anxiety and continue to be in a time of anxiety because we worry about the future. We worry about what is yet to be. And our animals are such a gift as they hold us right in that present moment and remind us. They're angels. They are a gift to us to bring us out of the future or our imagination of the future and into the present world. And everything flows from that kind of connection. Connection begins with ourselves. If we are to connect with the environment, it compels us to connect with ourselves. Everything flows from connection. All justice flows from connection. And the first connection we must make is with ourselves. Why does it seem so complicated? And why do so many spiritual prodigies say it's easy? I mean, that always makes me smile and almost makes me want to laugh. Really? Easy? Seriously? In our mindfulness practices on Wednesday morning, I wish I had a nickel for every time Thich Nhat Hanh says, it's easy. It's easy. In 2 minutes, you can feel peace. It's easy. Jesus today says, come to me, all you that are weary and are carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy, and my burden is light. So the first thing we must point out is that this kind of movement into spiritual presence, it may be easy, but it's not lazy. Did I just lose my Nope. For some people are nope, that won't help because my batteries are dead. We refreshed this morning. But we are prepared. That's good because my sermon's 4 hours long.
And we heard you say
That's why I have 18 backup batteries right there. Okay, back. Look. Steve? There we go. Okay. Thank you. Well, hold your applause. You may not want to hear what I have. So, this presence comes out of not laziness, but discipline. Whether it's mindfulness or taking a yoke upon you. There is some kind of intention and awareness we're called to. It just doesn't just happen, but it's very close and always accessible to us. We must have some intention and awareness. What we do not need is a PhD in spirituality. Okay. So I've been reading this book called The Hero's Journey, which is an interview with Joseph Campbell. And he says in part of this, he says, I have a theory that, yes, PhDs are all right in certain areas. But in the areas of the liberal arts, of culture, it's a sign of incompetence to have a PhD. And the crowd is laughing at this point because there was a film made of it as well. And he said, I mean it. The time when you should have been finding your thoughts, should have been opening up and being excited at the stuff, is exactly the time they bring the axe down on you. I can remember a wonderful professor at Columbia named Raymond Weaver. He's the one who rediscovered and re-edited Melville back in the 20s. When I decided I was going to go on to graduate work, he said, well, be careful because they're going to flatten you out. He came out of Europe when the Depression was just starting in the United States. And there was no jobs. He ended up in a cabin, and he spent 5 years reading books. He didn't try to control his spread of knowledge. What he did was he chose a book that inspired him. And then he read every book by that author. And then he saw what inspired them, and he started reading those books. And he kept going through this complete library of books. And at the end of that, he had, he said like 40 file cabinets of notes. He also went on to say he never, ever looked at his notes again. It's not about controlling or writing an essay about life. It's about living life. It's about the exploration process. It's not about having a balanced diet of this, that, and the other thing. It was about following his spirit. And it's a really interesting thing. Jesus said, and it's connected to the rest and the peace. I thank you, Father, Lord of heaven and earth, because you have hidden these things from the wise and intelligent and have revealed them to infants. For such was your gracious will. Now, let's be clear. This is not anti-intellectualism. It's self-awareness. Sometimes we use control and doctrine and certainty and study to say, I am right. I don't have to change, or I don't have to evolve. And if anything, our faith should be radically different than that. So I'm going to talk to you in a moment about a practice that I've developed for myself that helps me release the infant joy in me. Because, and here's where it started. I realized somewhere along the way that I've always equated my mind with my soul. If I'm thinking it, maybe it has that kind of level of authority in my life. I've never seen my mind other than that. But the mind takes charge really quickly. It tells us of concerns about not being strong enough, smart enough, beautiful enough, young enough, rich enough, and on and on. It more than not leads us to anxiety, fear, depression, and inaction. This is why Jesus celebrates the inability of the mind to understand, control, or suffocate profound spiritual truth. My mind has always been on steroids. And that is not saying that I'm intelligent. It's simply saying that my mind is the loudest one in my room. My mind barges into the party that is me and takes over the room. There might be some joy, some possibility, a smile, a hope, some fun, some compassion, a great idea, creativity, a vision, a yearning for justice emerging in the party of myself, and my mind barges into the party and says, wait a minute, have you really thought this through? Think of all the things that could go wrong. Let's start there. My mind does a complete analysis on everything and quite frankly can inspire fear, negativity, anxiety, even depression if I give it authority to. Now you see what I'm doing. When you start to think that way, you immediately begin to distinguish between your mind and your deeper self. Yeah, I don't know if you journal, but guess what? You're talking to yourself. Probably most Facebook pages are talking to yourself. You have the ability to distinguish various aspects of yourself. And if we don't discern that, we are in danger of being stuck in our heads. I know I am. And so I begin to see that I've let the mind drive the car. Right? I've always felt like my mind, the phrase I like to use, ties truth to a chair and beats a confession out of it with a rubber hose. You must tell me. You must know. I must know before I act. I must know. There's no vulnerability in that at all. It's about self-protection. So I like having that level of analysis in my car, but I let it drive way too often. I don't sometimes consider what it means to put it aside. And I think this is what Jesus is teaching us. He's teaching us a self-awareness, actually. And that kind of self-awareness is where all this richness comes from. Be anxious for nothing. Love your enemy. Rejoice. Wow. God has always seen us as a community. Now what I mean by that is you're not just you. Self-discernment requires you to differentiate the various aspects of yourself. God does it. Love the Lord your God with your heart, your mind, all your strength, your soul. That's self-differentiate. God is calling forth our self-differentiation. So what is your relationship with your mind like? And that's what I'm getting to. Jesus is calling us to a relationship with ourselves. We are an inner community. And how beautiful is it that God is an inner community too, a triune God. That the nature of existence itself is self-reflective. The foundation of all that is, according to our Christian spirituality, is self-reflective. Yeah. Creator, Redeemer, Sustainer, however you describe the triune God, that God is in relationship with God's self. It interacts with God's self. That is the primal basis on which we should be meditating, reflecting, studying, and discerning and doing deep looking into ourselves. Okay, so here's the practice. It's a way to develop a relationship with your mind and stop treating your mind as the one driving. It's a way to put your soul back in the driver's seat. And when you find yourself feeling anxious, depressed, fearful, angry, consider where the thoughts are coming from. Most likely, your mind is racing and working overtime. So, say to your mind, I love you, mind. I am so grateful for you, for the many ways you are trying to save me, protect me, guide me, and warn me. You are amazing. You are working overtime. Take a break. Let someone else drive for a while. Our soul has this. God has this. In fact, I'm going to pull over, open the convertible roof, and let you sit in the back seat where you can stop mapping the journey and can watch the world go by, smell the air, and look up at the clouds. Give it a try. It's easy.